Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Immersive Arts Alliance's Augmented Reality, This World and the One Next Door. My name is Vanessa Chang. I am a curator, writer, and educator, currently based in San Francisco, known originally as Yilamu on the unceded territories of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. I'm on the board of Immersive Arts Alliance, who is presenting this event. Immersive Arts Alliance presents exhibits and performances from a global community of artists who create experiential and immersive art. Augmented reality. There are profound implications of living in a world where the imaginary is layered over what we see and believe we know. Our guests today are creating inspiring and provocative work at the frontiers of this emerging practice known as augmented reality, or AR for short. AR is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where real-world objects are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, often visual, but sometimes auditory, haptic, or even olfactory. AR is used in interior design and architecture, as in IKEA's app, in aerospace for pilots to superimpose data onto their fields of view, at archaeological sites, and even in medicine. AR can inject some fun into our on-screen interactions, as with Snapchat lenses, turn the real world into a playground, as with Pokemon Go, or sustain playful, serious, thoughtful, or provocative reflections on the worlds we inhabit. Today, our guests, Ines Alpha, Ecco Screen, and Zach Lieberman share their inventions, their projects, and thoughts about our augmented future. So each of our artists, we'll start with each of our artists briefly presenting their work, and then we'll open into a larger discussion. For those listening, there will be a Q&A function, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout our discussion. So if any of you have questions that emerge during the discussion, please feel free to submit them. We'll also leave a bit of time at the end for Q&A. All right, let's begin. Ines Alpha. Ines Alpha is a 3D artist based in Paris who creates enchanted and fantastic versions of reality. Her main body of work consists of the 3D makeup series, where she pushes the boundaries of makeup and beauty using 3D software and augmented reality.
That's me.
All right, Ines, take us away. Would you like to show us some of your work?
Okay, my turn. Let's go. Let me just, okay. So so I'm Ines Alpha. I'm a digital artist, and I specialize in what I've called 3D makeup, which is makeup but using digital software and 3D elements. And as some of you may know, I also do augmented reality filters on Snapchat and Instagram. So I started, just a quick introduction, I started experimenting with 3D, doing video clips mostly, and already adding 3D elements in reality to make it more fantastic. And at the same time, I was working at an advertising company as an art director, specialized in beauty and cosmetic and fashion. So one day I decided to unite two of my favorite things, or two of my skills, which are 3D and makeup and beauty. So I started adding 3D elements on people's faces this way, just to experiment and to have fun. And accidentally, I was creating my personal vision of the future of beauty. So those are collaborations, video that I've made and that I've worked on, because I didn't want to work not only on my face, which I can find boring in some way, and I like to take inspiration from people. So those videos are post-production. It's not augmented reality, as you may know, with filters. It's not real time. You have to make a video and then add the 3D afterwards using post-production software. It's like, it's more of a Hollywood technique, let's say. with not the same machine. So I'm gonna go quickly to the video, otherwise I will talk too much, but those are some of the work that I did trying to augment the personality of the people I was collaborating with, and yeah, trying to make their personality more whimsical and magical and futuristic. So you've seen that, that's of them. So yeah, some of the 3D makeup designs that I've made, I've adapted them to augmented reality filters. Those are some of my creations on Instagram and Snapchat. So you can see, so this happens in a second just using your smartphone, and you don't have to wait for computer calculations. So this was super magic and super, this was great to me because this was the only way I could democratize my work. So anyone could wear 3D makeup like they could use physical makeup in a way. And I really wanted my art to be accessible to everyone. So that are other filters that I've made. Some of them work on cats. This is DJ, he's nice sometimes. And I started collaborating with brands as well, and I do that a lot this past years. So this is a collaboration with Selfridges, where I had to create makeup inspired by some of their products. This is the collaboration with Dior. So you can see the difference between post-production video on the left side and the augmented reality filter version on the right side. And for most of my project, I don't do that all by myself because it takes a lot of time. So there's a post-production company helping me for some of the videos, and there is another filter creator called Aaron Jablonski, and I don't know how to pronounce his names. I'm very sorry, Aaron, who works with me on the filter development. And this was a campaign for H&M, so you can see the difference between post-production and augmented reality. But it's making like so much progress, and technologies go so fast that the real-time render that you can see on the left is for Burberry. It's getting more closer to reality than, I mean, when with the time it's getting better. This is another project. I don't want to take too much time. So thanks for listening to my little presentation.
All right, thank you, Ines. Really exciting work, and I'm looking forward to digging into it more.
Fast.
Oh, no, well, we can talk more about it shortly. Our next panelist is Jeffrey Bryant. Jeffrey Bryant founded Ecco Screen, a San Francisco-based experiential art studio founded in 2019. Ecco Screen explores human emotion, interaction, and introspection through the use of light, sound, and technology. Ecco Screen has exhibited across the US, Canada, and Europe, including at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Igloo Fest, Art Futura Roma, and MUTEC, to name but a few. He's also collaborated with Dolby, NASA JPL, Google, ASAP Rocky, and other established brands. Jeffrey, would you like to show us some of your work?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, I'm Jeffrey Bryant, and I run a art studio called Ecco Screen. And most of it is experiential installations where you walk into a space and this experience sort of surrounds you, and it responds to the way you move as well. This piece right here, oh, let me present this. Let it load real quick. There you go. So this is Gold Currants. It's an interactive installation that kind of acts as a fluid simulation. So when you move in front of it, it sends water gliding across a screen that kind of looks like fire. And it works with large crowds. So these will end up at different art festivals, different music festivals across the US and other countries. And then I also incorporate augmented reality with these installations as well. This is one we did with Dolby in collaboration with Gmonk. And it's basically like this interplanetary exploration, and your phone kind of acts as a window to this universe. It's sort of like a satellite, so you can walk around and travel through these planets and go up close to them and see all the water shining off of the surface of the planet. And then what's on screen is sort of like the feed that you get from the satellite of each planet. And then as you go to different planets, the feed will change and you can start to see different characters of different solar systems. And then this one was like a latest experiment where when the shutdown happened, I kind of lost a bunch of gigs because the events got shut down. So I went on Omegle one day and just played with this liquid filter. You basically rub your hand around and it distorts your image, and it kind of got a good response. So this is like my next project that I'm working on, where I'm bringing it to Facebook as a augmented reality filter that hundreds of millions of people can use at once. And it should be interesting. But yeah, that's a quick intro of my work.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. Would you like to, if you're done, would you like to stop the screen share? Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, and finally, our third panelist is Zach Lieberman. Zach Lieberman is an artist, researcher, and educator, creates performances and installations that take human gesture as input and amplifies them in different ways. He's been listed as one of Fast Company's most creative people, and his projects have won the Golden Nika from Ars Electronica, Interactive Design of the Year from Design Medium London, and have also been listed in Time Magazine's Best Inventions of the Year. He's co-creator of Open Frameworks, an open source C++ toolkit for creative coding. And he also co-founded the School for Poetic Computation in New York. He now teaches in the Media Arts and Sciences at MIT. Zach, would you like to share us a little bit of your work?
Sure. So super happy to be here and excited to be part of this panel. The thing I would say about AR, I'll show some examples of projects that I've been doing with sort of, phone or tablet-based AR. And just to say that for me, it was really exciting, like 2 or 3 years ago when Apple released ARKit and AR Core came out from Google. There was this interesting moment where you could say, okay, what does it mean to have a device in space? What does it mean to have a camera in space, or a screen in space, or a speaker or a microphone in the air? And so doing a lot of experiments about kind of what those things mean. And I just want to show 3 things really quickly. The first is a project called WeirdType that my partner Momo Ko and I developed. And this is an application where you can write words and put them in the air. So you can type, it's an iOS application, you can write text and you can put it in the air. And there's a bunch of different modes where you can put letters and the letters move when you move. And we put this app out there. And one of the things that I find really exciting is that people bring their own creativity to it. So somebody figured out if you take the letter O, you can drag it in the air and you can make a tunnel and then run through it with your body. Another app that we made is called Weird Cuts. And this app allows you to take photographs of things in the world. So it's basically a kind of, think about it almost as a collage machine. And then we're always in the studio experimenting and saying, okay, we have built this tool, let's figure out some weird or strange way to use it. A lot of time doing stuff like this, like cutting up eyes and noses and making strange faces. But again, people use it in really strange ways. Like somebody made a sandwich. They took our Weird Cuts tool and they made a three-dimensional sandwich, which I really love. I love the creativity that people bring to augmented reality. And the last thing is that I do a lot of daily sketching. So I post on Instagram. For the last 4 years or so, I've been posting these kind of small sketches, animated sketches, and a lot of them have been using AR in different ways. And so you'll see a lot of stuff on the Instagram feed. And I would say these are experiments trying to figure out a kind of grammar of augmented reality. I actually think, sorry, one thing I want to share, I'm just going to make sure I share with audio, share one more thing and then jump into this conversation. This is recording audio in space. So when you make sound, the audio stays in the air. And then when you walk through it, the audio replays. This is a test of talking and seeing what happens when we record audio in space. This is a test of talking and what happens when we record audio in space. Audio in space. Cool.
Thank you, Zach, for that incredibly succinct and potent expression of your work. There are a number of things that you brought up that I think really resonate with all of the panelists here that I'd like to invite everyone to discuss. And so what I've seen across this, I mean, Ines, you're working with AR and the human face, right? And the human body. Zach, your work is very much engaged with bodies moving through space, objects moving through space, and invitation to kind of engage with the world in playful ways. And Jeffrey, so too, with a lot of your work, like how are you inviting people to really engage with space differently? So I guess my question here is like, how do you understand the potential of AR for changing our understanding of ourselves as bodies in space? Like where are we? Are we in reality? Are we on screen? Like how do you see that?
Who wants to start? I mean, from my point of view, it's mostly about making reality more fun and weird and fantastic. So you play with whatever and wherever you can put something else. And for now, we feel that it's not real because it's only accessible through our phone. But I guess that in the near future, it will be more, I guess someday it will feel more physical, because I've heard and I've read some articles where they're trying to like have augmented reality with some sound frequencies and stuff, so you can feel you're touching some kind of a shape with technology, we're getting to something more physical, but it's not because it's not physical that it's not real for me. And soon enough, we'll have like this. For now, the phone is a frontier between reality and augmented reality, but soon enough, we'll have like glasses or contact lenses, and we will see those products, AR products that we're all making with our own eyes. So it will get very real.
I think there's also something so interesting about how when you do things that are based on the body, and thinking about Jeffrey's work, and yeah, I guess all of our work is about kind of taking the body as a starting point. And a lot of times I feel like those interactions are so natural. Like you see yourself, right? It's like looking in the mirror, but you see yourself with some sort of augmentation. And so on the one hand, you could say, okay, that's very simple, very childish. Like you're building it's a mirror, right? You're building a sort of something akin to a mirror. But I think there's something really beautiful when you see people play. You know, when you watch people use face filters, they look away and then they look at the filter. They look away and it doesn't recognize the face, and they look at the filter. And there's this moment of perception, like when is there a human there? When do I see a face? And people play on that boundary. They want to break the system. They want to understand, how does the computer, you know, recognize that I'm a person, that I have a body, that I'm moving, that I'm not just, you know, typing, that I'm not clicking the mouse, but that I'm a real physical, that my body has agency. And to me, there's something really, really beautiful and profound in that moment. And I think a lot of the power of AR is residing in that moment of agency.
Yeah, I agree. It's there is this other filter creator called Joshka. I guess you might have heard of her, and she always says there is no filter without you. And I think that this sentence, I mean, it's pretty clear. There's no AR without our physical world, and I totally agree with Zach that the magic that is that exists when those things pops up because the computer recognized all the perspective and the face, the shape. It's super crazy.
Yeah, I love what you're both saying about play as something that's really urgently grounded in the human body at a time when we have so many gadgets and so many things that are mediating our experience in the world. It's funny, it's something I hadn't anticipated insofar as, you know, people think about AR as something imaginary layered over the real, but it sounds, Zach and Ines, that you're suggesting it's really about reaffirming the reality of the human body, the power of human perception, and play is kind of an urgent reality we need to kind of continually attend to. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on this kind of impulse to play? Is that something that you look to create in your own work?
Well, the way I see augmented reality right now, it's a really experimental space, right? And we're making all these cool experiments that people love to play with. But I think we're all creating this something really huge right now. Once the glasses and devices like Neuralink come and your vision is pretty much taken over by augmented reality, I think we'll be building some really serious applications there that will let you actually direct objects in real life just by using like an AR overlay.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be hard to take the glasses off. You know, everything will be like super magical, and I don't know if I would take the glasses off if I would be able to see like super weird and cute creatures all around me. Sure.
Right. When reality needs a little bit of imagination or decor, why ever leave it? I suppose. Well, it's interesting the way we're talking about this as a new frontier. Jeffrey, you talk about Neuralink, and there's this real framing of AR as being something that's extremely not just contemporary, but future looking. But what do you think the lineage of this medium is in an art historical sense? Would you place it within the context of other kinds of more traditional art practices? And if so, what do you think they would be?
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is this Pepper's Ghost effect, which is like a way to kind of create a hologram using reflections and transparent glass. And it's been around for at least over 100 years. And I think that's one of the very early experiments. And what we're doing with AR is sort of like an animated version that tracks the world with you. And also a cool AR project was React Table, which is, to me, one of the first AR projects that use QR codes to let you track objects and kind of VJ or create sound depending on how you turn these objects that are tracked by QR codes. It's very early AR tech right there.
Zach, any thoughts about what the other lineage might be of this medium?
I guess scientific, educational, there are lots of stuff we can do with AR to, because you can use it for fun, for art, but also to help people find their way or to get some information real time on the object you're looking at, or so I guess it's a good way, like Google Map in real time, in space, just looking at the streets, and you know exactly which turn to take. The day will have that on the windows of the cars. Then you don't have to look at your GPS and stuff like this. I mean, we've seen that a lot in sci-fi movies already. It's been, like Jeffrey said, everything has always been imagined in books and movies. and it's crazy to think that in those past like five years, we're like everyone has already access to that very easily with the phone, and it's like when I was a kid, I wouldn't have believed that really, and I would have thought like I will be dead when that will be on my planet, and it's happening, and I'm not even super old, so yeah. And I think I will experience the contact lenses with augmented reality for sure, which sounds crazy. So yeah.
I think I don't know about tying it to like an art an art history and historical art concept, but I think a lot about the sort of graphical forms. When I was a kid, I used to love opening up. Sometimes you'd have these textbooks and you'd open them up and you'd have these pages that were like printed on clear plastic. Where you'd have a sort of an underlying photograph, and then you'd have these layers, and you could take like the human body, and then you could have a piece of plastic, which is a layer of muscles, and then a layer of bones, and then a layer of, and you could almost like through this process of printing, layer up information. I always found those, I always loved those when I was a kid. And I think of AR as the sort of, yeah, kind of digital equivalent of that, of saying, okay, let's take, what are those pages of cellophane for the world that we can create? And it could be, you know, they could be all, they could be informational, they could be expressive, etc. One thing I do want to say is that like AR is also, I think, a really interesting vehicle for ambiguity, for creating moments of just, yeah, ambiguous situations. And I think a lot about the work of the sound artist Janet Cardiff, and she has all of these great, she does these audio walking tours, and I went to see this at PS1, which is a museum in New York, and you go, and this was a long time ago, you go, you get like a Walkman, or maybe it was a Discman at the time, and you put on headphones, and she takes you on a walk around the building, and she's doing all kinds of things with audio. So it's not real time, it's a recording, but she's recorded herself telling you a story in the space, and she's playing with 3D audio. So she's putting sound behind you and in front of you. And there are sounds that she's recorded in the space and you can't tell if they're real or not. And I think there's something so, yeah, really so special about this, yeah, ambiguity, about not understanding what's real and what's not real. And that's the power of AR. Whenever I put on VR, I really feel I'm in a different place. You know, you put on the headset, you're in a very different place. You know, there's a dramatic change when you take the headset off, and AR is very different. It's about, you know, exploring the boundaries of perception and playing with ambiguity in some way.
I love that. That's a really interesting kind of artistic strategy as well, because, you know, in terms of injecting ambiguity into other kinds of maybe more charged situations, that can be a space to redefine how something means. I saw a really interesting piece which was about kind of the experience of immigration, right? And how does someone who's a new immigrant to a country experience the city? And how is that experience different from someone who's actually moving through that space? And it seems like there's real potential for fostering deep empathy or kind of questioning embedded assumptions about what we think about a space really means, or who it means and how it means as well. I'd like to pick up on something both Ines and Zach were saying about the applications and this notion of layers in AR. It seems that there's so many ways that we can think about augmenting experience. It can be used, you know, in cars to give us data streams and more information, and layering dynamic maps over the world that we're living in. But because of this dynamism, there's so many potential intersections with other kinds of fields of creativity. Zach, I believe performance is really central too to how you think about this. So how do you see the crossover of AR to these other fields of creativity, whether it's fashion or architecture or performance? And how do you see them maybe being changed, or their meanings being changed by AR in the ways that we've discussed?
It's just super exciting, I guess, for all those creative fields, because it's I remember before augmented reality, I had a feeling that that I was seeing the same stuff all over and over again, and that artistically there were no new stuff. That, I mean, at least that was not exciting enough for me. And when AR came out, I was like, oh my god, a new tool to create. Like, I mean, when you're creative and you can have access to one new tool, you go crazy. It's like too many possibilities, you know. So so yeah, that's super exciting, because then you get so many ideas. Like even before the filters, I was looking for, but technically I'm not good enough to program that. But I wanted to do an augmented reality show for a music producer I was working. I worked a lot, who's called Panteros 666, and I wanted him to have to wear 3D clothes using some what's the camera of the Xbox?
Xbox.
The Kinect, sorry. And I wanted to use the Kinect technology to follow his body movements, so it can replace him with some characters and stuff. And in the end, we only used his silhouette. We cut out his silhouette and add some graphics, but I could already see the possibilities for live exhibitions and shows. And later on, I saw a show of, I mean, it was still just a screen for Skrillex playing, and he was wearing a bodysuit, and you could see him and like a huge character reproducing all his body movement. And you have also like Hatsune Miku, which is like a digital avatar playing live. And for now, she's a hologram, but you can imagine that in augmented reality, and it opens so many doors to creativity and to creating new worlds. For fashion, you can imagine a fashion catwalk with digital avatar, and you can imagine that all the scenography is popping up all around in AR. It's like, seriously, I don't even want to think about it, because then I'm like, I can't do this right now. I can't do this yet. So it makes me frustrated, but we are very close to doing so many cool stuff. So
yeah, the fields of performance, the field of exhibition, even architecture, gaming, the possibilities seem really rich. Are there specific projects perhaps that Zach or Jeffrey, you have in mind that are doing this kind of crossover work with AR?
I mean, I see a lot of really, I mean, at a very basic level, like filmmaking. You know, if you think about, there's such a strong visual language in our culture of having motion tracking and having 3D graphics embedded in, you know, if you think about all of the sort of kind of, I don't know, special effects films and music videos and things that involve some form of motion tracking, some form of 3D graphics that are superimposed in the real world. And those are very hard to do. If you were trying to do that work in, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was very time consuming. You would have to learn, you know, you'd have to be doing 3D modeling. You'd have to be doing, you know, using motion tracking software and getting all of these sort of pipeline of tools together in order to say, like, I want to put an image in the air and be able to move around it, or I want to put a 3D model in space, or I want to attach something to somebody's body. And the fact that these are now really like off-the-shelf tools that you can use for filmmaking, for me, that's exciting. And I see a lot of people, you know, there are there's generations of folks who are using their phones not to just consume. Like whenever I'm on the subway, I'm always looking and I see like, okay, what are the gestures? Like everybody's just like swiping with their phone. But then you see like these young kids are like waving their phone around and making films and editing, and, you know, and you see how kids are using new tools. And to me, that's really exciting. Like it is, when these devices are used for production and not for consumption, like that's a really interesting moment. So I would say like filmmaking is definitely, you know, because of COVID, I've had, you know, multiple phone calls with people who are like want to shoot a music video and they need to do it in a very low tech way, where maybe in the past they would have had a film crew and a special effects house and so on. And then they're saying, you know, can we use your apps? Like, how do we modify the software that you've made for this shoot? Because it's like you can't shoot a music video in the age of COVID in the same way. So, but everybody has a cell phone. Everybody can learn how to use the app. And, you know, that to me, that's really exciting.
Do you see this? I mean, Zach, what I'm hearing from you is that you see this as, in a way, is kind of fundamental democratizing of production. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. I mean, I see it. Well, yeah, I see it quite positive, but I'm also really. I think we need to be really cautious about. You know, we're playing with a lot of technologies that are controlled by big companies. They have a very specific direction. And I think we're benefiting because there's a sort of arms race about, you know, computational photography that's happening between Google and Apple and Facebook and other companies. And so there are lots of interesting features that as artists we're able to pick apart and use in creative ways. But, you know, I don't think that what we're doing is exactly what these companies had imagined. And I think what they, you know, they're imagining a world of advertising and of, I don't know. I love the world that we're creating, but I don't necessarily think that that's the world that these platforms have in mind.
So you see these kinds of creative practices as a form of hacking, in a sense?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, it's I think a welcome reading to me of these kinds of processes at a time when you're right, we are overwhelmed by many different platforms and technologies, and because the tools are ready and there to be used, that we use them without always thinking about to whose benefit we're using them for and who owns those images. I think we can get a little bit philosophical here. I mean, if we're thinking about this layering of the imaginary over the real, I mean, what do you think the implications are of living in a world where the imaginary is layered over the ordinary? I mean, are we living in this new moment? Everybody kind of talks about deep fakes as something to be really concerned about. Or do you talked about agency, Zach, at the beginning of this discussion. Is that something that we can really kind of hold on to or kind of actively advocate for in this technology?
Yeah, I mean, I always worry about I cannot remember the name of this. There's a Japanese designer who has this great movie of like what the future of AR could look like up to volume up to 11. I want to say it's hyper reality. I'll look it up in a second.
Yeah, I think it's hyper reality. I think you can find his video on Vimeo.
But I always think of like the worst AR is like that, or like Back to the Future 2 or 3 or something, like where there's like advertisements that are jumping out at you. But what I think is so like the thing that I really love is when platforms allow artists to really express themselves. Like Ines making filters, there's something, you get to see the world through her eyes, right? And I think there's something about AR where it's like an artist can be the lens that you see the world through, and that, to me, that's really interesting. And that's also another form of agency where the artist can say, okay, I'm going to use this tool and show you the world through my eyes, you know, or you can, that to me, that's quite interesting. But like the nightmare of AR is, advertisement everywhere.
Yeah, I hope we won't get, I don't know, sometimes I'm trying to be optimistic about this stuff, but it's difficult not to imagine the worst case scenario, especially after watching like Black Mirror or Years and Years, you know, what the girl is like wearing her filter on all day long because she can't even look at her real self. Which would be, the danger would be to not be able to switch that off and to enjoy reality as it is. That is a little bit scary to me, even though I would love to live in a virtual world with cute digital pets all around me. But I mean, is that really life? I don't know. So I agree with that, Zach, that when you see how new technologies are being used for creative or educational purposes, that's great. And hopefully we have we have the chance to have those tools are free, which is crazy. So it's really good that so many people are getting creatives those days, and so many people have access very easily to that, because you don't even need to go to a museum. You just need a smartphone. So it's like crazy. So yeah, but they are scary downsides for sure.
Well, and I want to kind of pick up on something. A question just came in through Q&A, and I think this speaks to something Zach was saying about looking through the eyes of the artist, but also, Ines, what you're suggesting about filters kind of displacing a real identity. Because for many people, everyday makeup is part of their kind of personal artistic expression. So, I mean, do you think that digital makeup in AR, this is from Emil Polyak, do you think that digital makeup in AR and digital self-modification could reach the point where it does become part of our identity as much as physical makeup? You know, for many of us, we're on Zoom all the time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that more and more people are spending time crafting their digital selves. So for now, a lot of people are playing with already made filters, but more and more people are creating their own filters. So they are creating their own digital makeup and digital appearance, and anyone can decide to wear a specific filter all the time. So his digital personality will be very specific, and within like very precise art direction. And yeah, I think it's the same thing as physical makeup. At the end of the day, you switch the filter off and you look at yourself in the mirror, you remove the makeup, and you're like, ugh, I look tired.
Well, it seems to me these questions in this discussion we're having about agency and technology and the kind of place of technology as either a tool of artistic expression or as an instrument of advertising, come down to larger discussions about technologies and who they're for. And are we going to have these conversations in dialogue with larger cultural conversations about what we value in how people look? Who gets to, what does it mean to look good? What does it mean for a space to be well designed? What does it mean for an artwork to be good? All of these kinds of aesthetic judgments are sometimes built into the technology, but they're very much built into they very much are expressed in how people choose to use them. So, I'm with y'all saying, yeah, there's lots of possibilities either way, but what kind of work do you think that we need to do as people working in the arts to ensure that these are healthy expressions of these creative technologies?
Interesting.
Do you have thoughts, Jeffrey, about that?
I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of a thin line there.
I guess what's good with augmented reality is that it doesn't cut you off from reality completely, because it's mixed with the physical world. So of course you have to if you're on the phone or using glasses, everything is not covered and you can look at your phone and look at the real space, so you don't fall if you're walking and playing Pokemon Go, for instance. So I guess if we're still playing with reality, it seems where's the limit? Actually, no, I'm talking and then I'm thinking, where's the limit? So
I think one thing is just like, can you, with any given technology, can you imagine, like, what is the Black Mirror episode, right? What is the worst possible twisted world outcome of this. And I think that's an important thing just to be thinking about or speculating. And your work doesn't necessarily have to address that, but I think it's important, you know, if you're interested in machine learning, if you're interested in AR, VR, et cetera, like there are a lot of these things that they get a lot of, there's a lot of hype around them, which means there's a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunities. And I think that it's important to have some level of critical thinking around what they are, what they mean. And then also to understand like who's funding this stuff and what are their interests, right? And what are, you know, what are their, and are their interests aligned with you? And they don't necessarily have to be, but I think artists are almost like sailing, like there's different currents that come. And so we're we're taking the wind and we're trying to get to a direction, and we may not be going in the same direction as the wind, but our job is to kind of find the wind and harness it and use it to tack in different directions. So I think sometimes it's important to know like your own internal compass, like what direction do you want to go in versus like where things are pushing towards.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about and for me ask you all about how you distinguish, or how does your practice diverge between these commercial applications and these art applications? Is it a sense of kind of what feels right and what kind of dovetails with your own statement of expression as an artist? You know, do they kind of have different modes of working when you're working for these different spaces, and then working for, you know, to make art and working for commerce?
I don't know if that answers the question, but I was thinking of like everyone is responsible for what he or she is making with those tools. And I was thinking when I started collaborating with brands, and I wanted to share my vision of beauty and makeup. And for me, beauty is very inclusive, very diverse. So for instance, when I started working with Dior, I was like, that's a very conservative brand. Should I work with them? Because their vision of beauty is not really mine. It's a little bit different because they're quite, yeah, they're still a little bit conservative. And then I thought, still, they are willing to work with an artist like me. So maybe my work would change a little bit their vision of beauty. And if this kind of very conservative brand wants to add digital elements on someone's face and make something a little bit weirder than what they used to do, then I've done a good part of my job, you know. Yeah, I think I kind of help in the way of making beauty a little bit more different. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think this brings us back to our earlier discussion of ambiguity, right? And how AR can introduce and make us question the existing meanings that we attach to the real world objects that are also themselves built, right? We build them, and there are a lot of assumptions built in them. They've just been around for so much longer that we don't question them because they feel real. Jeffrey, how does your art practice, or your practice as an artist, kind of work in parallel or alongside or converge with your work with brands?
Yeah, so far working with brands has been pretty smooth sailing. They're really happy to just work with you on your vision and not really try to change it at all. So most of the time that I work with them, they're just coming to me for my work that already exists, or they want me to create something entirely in my vision. But occasionally I'll get like people that want to slap their branding on stuff. Like there was a cigarette brand that wanted to put their name and like colors on my project. And I wasn't really a fan of that because I'm just not really about cigarettes and stuff like that. So sometimes you have to reject opportunities, even if they pay a lot, but money comes and goes, it flows around. So you can always just jump on something in the future. Yeah.
I have a comment here about artistic expression as opposed to human-centered design. Is the notion of human-centered design something that motivates your work with AR at all? I mean, we've talked about centering the human body and human perception. Is there ever a time you think that it can be so untethered that that is lost? And not necessarily in your own work. Yeah, Zach, please go ahead.
No, I kind of want to unpack this question. I mean, there is a user interface. There's a design, you know, an interface design aspect to AR, which is like, okay, you have to help somebody use this thing, whether it's a filter or an app or an interactive experience. There's some aspect of like, how do I design this thing so that it is understandable, so that people can understand the parameter space, so that people can, you know, and I think in general, my design philosophy is low floor, high ceiling. So can you design things that are just easy to understand, immediate, but have a lot of depth or range? And it's hard, and it's really hard in software. It's hard in things, you know, but if you think about it, like a piano is immediately understandable. If you're a baby, you can come and, you know, you touch a key on the piano and it makes a sound. You touch the key next to it, it's a little higher. Touch the key, you know, to the other side, it's a little lower, and you put two together, they sound good. And, you know, so there's like you can have combinatorial thinking, and then you could spend your life learning how to play the piano, right? But like the thing works right away, but then has some sort of depth. And oftentimes you know, I'll build very simple interactions, and the goal for me is always to build things that are easily understandable, that don't have a lot of text, that you can just come to and immediately understand, because it is you, because it is your body, but then have a range, and you can explore and get lost, and you know, and for me, it should be about that kind of play, and not about figuring something out, and not about trying to understand what's happening.
Yeah, I think that, again, returns us to what we're talking about in terms of AR as perhaps a more, of fostering a more natural kind of interface, or a more intuitive one. I mean, being well designed doesn't mean it's natural, right? And I think how you think about those interactions and how you shape those interactions have everything to do with, yeah, the choices you're making as an artist, how you want to define the ethical boundaries between your art practice and your commercial practice, whether you want to introduce ambiguity into a space, all of that. As we are winding down towards the last 5 or so minutes of this panel, I wanted to leave some space for Q&A. So for those of you watching right now, if you have questions that you'd like to add and ask our panelists, now is a good time to do so. You can do that through the Q&A function on the thing. You could also put them directly in our chat here. So feel free to jump in.
Well, there might be some questions. I wanted to join what we were talking earlier and add something, but I don't know if I understood the question very well.
Oh, please go ahead.
Now, sometimes I'm pretending, I'm trying my best to have an accent that makes you think that I can speak English quite well, but I can't.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you. No, the human-centered thing, because now why AR is so much centered on human and especially faces is because thanks or because of smartphones, everyone is so centered on himself and looking at themselves all the day on the phone. And that's the first thing. It's very intuitive to just look at yourself and instantly you have something on your face. And I wonder what are the statistics, but I think that people are more playing with their faces than with the environment. Unfortunately, But yeah, I guess that it's more because when you play with the environment, sometimes you have to know where to place the thing, maybe move it a little bit around, or you don't know what to scan. And when you play with filters, it's just like you don't even have to think. So I guess that's why AR is being a lot centered around human, because of that new usage that people are experiencing with the new technologies in the new smartphone.
Just muted myself without unmuting. You think I would get better at this by now? So I mean, I love what you're saying. It's something that is fostering a lot of encounters with our phone and with ourselves. And so in that sense, it's really just reinforcing the habits that we have. And we have a question here from Clark, is that, do we see a kind of AR coming that takes us away from screens, that takes us away from our phones, that might be a hologram in the space around us, or some other kind of incarnation? Do you anticipate that?
Yeah, I think you have to look at audio, and you have to look at specifically like wireless headphones as an interesting vehicle and a really unexplored, untapped territory for interactive, reactive systems. But if you think about the popularity of podcasts and the idea that you can walk around and have somebody's voices in your head, and and you have this very intimate relationship with the voice, there's something, like people are wearing headphones all the time. I mean, there's not a lot of commuting happening in New York right now, but you have, I step out to walk the dog, I put in headphones, right? I go to wash dishes, I put in headphones. And there's something like, I think really, I think we need to look at these places where computation is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and a more closer part of our body to understand where the future is heading. So Apple recently released an SDK where you can get a kind of like almost head orientation from the headphones. And they're using it for spatial audio, so that if you're watching, something on the television and you turn your head, you hear the sound, just like the sound changes in relationship to where your head is. But that's something that API seems really interesting and kind of magical, which is, okay, now we're going to have interactivity as it relates to sound. And maybe, I could imagine whole categories of things that we haven't thought of yet that relate to stuff like that are just like, because we're wearing devices and because they're such a close part of our body, then maybe the augmentation is happening in through a different, maybe it's something physical or something we're wearing, and maybe it's not something that we're seeing or contact lenses, but it might be something totally different.
Right. We have such an emphasis on visual experience. I mean, and this is something that dominates all kinds of art, right? Art galleries and museums. I mean, I love what you're saying about sound, because in some ways we augment our own reality all the time, right? So yeah, thinking about sound and vision, touch might be another way to think about it, like the haptic, smells even. There's a lot that lies ahead. All right, well, we are, little dose of real cat reality there. We are at the end of the hour, so I think this is a good time to wrap anything up. I'd like to, as we close, invite our panelists, if they have anything they'd like to quickly add to this conversation, or hope that they have for AR in the future.
Yeah, well, I wanted to chime in and just say that I think AR is going to be pretty realistic in the future, maybe like in the next 2 to 4 years, because of the advancements in AI. They can really just create things that are realistic, especially with this technology called light field technology, which is where you take photos and video of an object in real life and use AI to fill in the gaps from all angles. So instead of using digital like lines, vertexes, and shaders and all this stuff, it'll be replaced by just actual images. And when the glasses comes, it's going to look really realistic. Probably won't be able to tell if it's real or not. I think that would be dangerous and also fun at the same time.
It's coming. The future is almost here. Always.
It is.
Well, thank you so much, Ines, Zach, and Jeffrey, for making the time to speak with us today. This was a panel discussion brought to you by Immersive Arts Alliance on augmented reality. Thank you for watching, and look forward to speaking to you all in another reality, I suppose. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Ciao. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.